So tonight I want to talk about the fact that we now have, and I'm in Virginia, a Democrat controlled government in Virginia for the first time since 1993 because the Virginia GOP completely dropped the ball. And people always say it's voter fraud, it's all this stuff. At what point is it just the failure of the people who are supposed to win the state for Republicans? I think this is the point where it's just the failure of them. I'm going to give you a couple examples of this. I went to vote, and outside my polling place, where there often are people from both parties giving information on candidates not inside, all legal, there were several tables full of Democrat information, candidate information, information about the write-in candidate. There were people with shirts with candidate faces on them, all sorts of stuff for the Democrats. There was nothing for the Republicans, nothing whatsoever. So if you are an independent, if you are somebody who is just going to vote and doesn't have a lot of information, you are only confronted with Democrat people, with Democrat activists. No Republicans were there. So if I didn't already know who to vote for, aside from the just regular ones, if I didn't know who to vote for in the write-in categories, that person, that Republican, wouldn't have gotten my vote. And that's very much the same situation with a lot of other candidates. So in cases of write-ins for people who are Republicans, there were probably a lot of Republicans who went in to vote and clicked all the R boxes, but didn't know to add in hit the person's name for the write-in who's a Republican because there was no one outside giving any information, just a basic name of who you should write in. So that's the first story. Second of all, I didn't even know there was an election until I saw it through a Trump tweet. That's how I found out a massive election was happening in my state through one of President Trump's tweets. And then I did research. And that was 2 days before the election. And I do politics all the time. So at what point are we really clear that the Virginia GOP dropped the ball? I've spoken to people all across Virginia from last night throughout today. It's very similar stories. No activists, no signs. The only signs people saw were for Democrats. That's it. And I've seen people say, well, the Virginia GOP couldn't fundraise. Why not? They're in a state where Governor Northam talked about leaving a baby to be comfortable to die, and they couldn't fundraise off of that. This is what I'm saying. There's a real lack of understanding that the big stories that hit nationally that President Trump talks about at the rallies are the ones you should use to get people to donate money. It's a really basic concept. People aren't really getting it, apparently, at the Virginia GOP, because if you have a governor who wore blackface and I believe, lieutenant governor who's been credibly accused of sexual assault and an AG who wore blackface, you should, at least from a Virginia Republican standpoint, be saying to Democrats, why would you trust these people if they are for all the things you don't like and that you think Republicans are for? So the sexual assaults, the racism. Where was that effort? That didn't happen either. Not one ad. I did not see one ad, neither did my mom, nothing. So the things that you could fundraise off of, nobody cared about. And then you talk about, for instance, this woman who's running who had flipped off President Trump. It had been a whole story. I believe she got fired. She was running for office in Virginia, right? Something else I didn't know of. So if you have someone like that running for office, how do you not use that to rile up the base that you have in your state? How do you not use that to get those people who hate people who are flipping off the president and acting like that to the polls? There's just a complete lack of utilization of every single story or topic that would have pushed Republicans to the polls. And this nonsense about fundraising. If you're in a state with somebody who is the governor who has trended nationally for racism, for horrible abortion comments, how are you not using that to get mothers out to vote? How do you not do that? You don't want to do it because you don't want to confront the topics. You want to make it about jobs and the economy. But if the problem is voters have a job, they look at Northam and they're like, that's okay then. We should keep him. We should have more Democrats. So you needed emotional appeals. And the Virginia GOP just didn't do that. They didn't fundraise. There were no people out there giving any information. And all the signs for candidates did not make it clear who was who. So the Democrats had all these signs with Democrat or their slogan, something about the Green New Deal, all sorts of stuff. Republican signs were just the name and a bunch of stars. So voters were confused. There was no effort to fundraise, no ads. And one thing that really strikes me is that people were talking about, I don't see any young people going to the polls in Virginia. The reason why you didn't see that was probably because they were all going in deep blue areas, because they were all out there and they were all ready to go. But in these areas that were more purple, it was only older voters going out to vote. And we kept some of those seats. But right now in Virginia, the Democrats have a 21-19 margin in the Senate. That's not that big. 21-19 in the Senate, and in the House, 55-45. you can close those gaps, but not if you continue to not use anything that the Virginia Democrat Party gives you to get people out to vote, like the fact that your governor actually trended nationally about disgusting abortion comments, or that you could fundraise off of that. This is the problem I have with the Virginia GOP. And people who say it's all about redistricting, no, it's not. Redistricting has nothing to do with the fact that you have no conservative activists out there saying, here's who you voted for the writing candidates. Just doesn't matter. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you understand. I'm not saying that there weren't good people at the Virginia GOP. I'm saying so many lost opportunities to fundraise, to get people out there, that at some point it's just not the fault of the voters. It's the fault of the people who don't make it clear, even to people like me who know a lot about politics, that an election is happening. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and please share this.